do you think about that? Just almost, I think when I heard, I saw the story, and heard about Mr. President set up an economic advisory council. I reminded me of Donald Trump's economic advisory council as well. Is this a step in the right direction? I don't want you to be, don't be diplomatic. Just say what you feel.
No, I mean, I saw it today. It's made up of states and a few high rollers and all that.
Yeah.
The point is what advice the president takes. Buhari had a very, very powerful economic advisory committee as well with Rwani and the rest. But did he take the advice? In the end, they can only advise, they can't implement. So it's really down to what advice he implements. The guys that are there, the private sector guys that are there, are very accomplished. So if they tell him, hey, we need to remove subsidies, or we need to do X, or we need to do Y, what does he take and implement? That's going to be key. Not really. That's just really it.
All right. The names we're seeing that I'm seeing on the list is
Elumelu,
Aliko Dangote,
yep.
Femi Otedela, Amina Mena, that's the Vice President of Nigeria Economic Summit Group, Boye Olusanya, that's from Flour Mills, Shegun Ajayi Kader, DJ Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, Tony Elumelu, he needs an introduction. Bismarck Irani is still there. You know, he said some things recently. Yeah. Adman doesn't take my calls. Samaila Zubair is very busy, guys. Samaila Zubairu of AFC, Innocent Chukuma of Innocent. Jibril Adewale Tinubu at Owando. Yeah, okay. His Excellency Charles Soludo, Anambra State Governor. His Excellency Dapo Abiodun, Ogun State Governor. Bisola Emeka Adosu, even Governor, of course. Kola Additional. And Abdul Kadir Aliu of BUA, I think. Or I see BUA at the bottom. Okay. So this is from the list of the clearance list. Someone captured the clearance list. Asorok, the clearance list. So you're saying if he takes the advice,
what advice does he take? They're going to give him good advice. But what would he take? Because in Nigeria, they marry the economic and the political. IMF has said remove subsidies on power. Okay, that's good. That's good plus and minus at the argument. But the politics, the reality on ground is that if you do that, you lose votes, you get people upset because costs go up.
All right. So the reality, the politics is you don't do that because you want to keep the votes and keep the goodwill.
Political capital is like a bank account. It goes easily. So you've got to marry it with. So when people feel good, they can sacrifice. And that's where optics come in. The optics right now is that the current administration is a spendthrift, that they're not really cutting back on their spending. So you can't tell people to pay more for power when the senator says we can't cut a kobo from our expenses. We're importing SUVs. So the population is not going with them. There is no drive to say we're in this together. It's like they are doing their own thing, and then the people are suffering for that.
So it's saying one thing but doing the other thing.
Correct. People have to buy in.
If you were the head of the chief manager of the Nigerian economy, coordinating minister of the economy, IMF says cut electricity tariffs. You've done well cutting the petrol subsidy, but you're still paying money. You also need to take that. What are you going to say? What are you going to do?
Not now.
What are you going to tell the president?
It's good advice, but when is a question. When do you cut it? Nigerians are not consuming. This was at 2022. Not consuming. 23, not consuming. Costs have gone up, wages have stayed flat, inflation has gone up. So you cannot add more cost because it makes economic sense. I'm a capitalist, but you've got to be realistic and say, hey, Nigerian households cannot afford it. Or you can cut it and give a subsidy somewhere else. Say, okay, we're going to give you free education, really free education, and you're going to pay more on power. But you just can't add that cost in. We still haven't recovered from the PMS subsidy removal, which is good, but you've got to give the palliatives. No economy increases cost to 200% and says, hey, you can pay. This is a very, very poor. The people in Nigeria are very, very poor in terms of income. Per capita income is very, very low. You simply can't keep on adding costs on and on and on because it makes economic sense.
So it's a good idea from the IMF and the Bretton Woods institutions generally. But it's not the right time to implement it. It's what you're saying.
We don't have the means or the capacity now. We're really low. People are dying over bags of rice.
Apart from, is it just about the removal of subsidy on petrol? Could Nigeria have continued to subsidize petrol? Though the IMF is saying we're still paying subsidy on petrol.
So 3 questions, right? So the number 1, we're still paying subsidy. And number 2, yes, we're paying subsidy. The Naira is where it is today because we're not exporting enough. We have net exports, but we're not exporting enough. Crude oil exports in Nigeria as of 2005 was about 2.3 million barrels per day. Today is about 1.5, 1.7 million barrels per day. Just the math tells you that we're not exporting enough.
So it's not about removal of subsidy?
No, that's just a cost. It's actually revenues to the government. But when you don't earn the US dollars in, then your foreign reserves cannot rise. Then you cannot defend the naira. What we're seeing is the naira falling, taking into account the fact that the exports are down. So it's falling to its natural position. And again, we do a lot of education outside the country, a lot of healthcare outside the country. So that's imports. When you send your kid to school in London, you are importing. When you go to medical care in India, you are importing. So when you add all that up, we're not exporting enough. We have no foreign reserves to back up the naira. Hence, it's going to its position, its real position.
So some people feel that Buhari's wasting means advances of 23 trillion, 3.8 trillion naira, though Akpabio said 30 trillion naira, is the reason that the naira is going through what it's going through today. What do you think?
I mean, you can argue that money was in the system, then focuses to demand for dollars, and that's why you see a huge surge in the dollars. You can make that argument. But the fact of...
Kalu Aja, let's answer the lady's question before we went on the break. She asked about the crude swap program under the Buhari administration, where Nigeria was giving out crude oil to get petrol back. I remember at some time, Malam Medicari, head of the GMD of NNPCL, went to meet the president when he said he couldn't remove subsidy. Okay, you want to keep paying subsidy, this is a bill. You have to add XYZ amount of $1 million to us so we can continue to sustain it. So is that one of the things that led us to where we are as far as the naira is concerned?
Yeah, well, we spent our oil wealth on a PMS subsidy we could not afford. So essentially what Nigeria was doing was that we give out crude oil and in return we swap it for PMS. But the differential in price means that we still have to, when it lands in Lagos, we still have to subsidize the cost to bring it down to the retail price. So the retail price was fixed. So if it lands in Lagos at say 600, we have to then pay a subsidy to reduce that 600 to the retail price in Nigeria. That's what NNPC was doing. And that's what you hear the cost of subsidy was those trillions and all. So the NNPC, instead of remitting money to the FARC to be shared to the state and the federal, was then paying a subsidy. So you heard the former CBN governor Mefele saying, I've not gotten any money from the NNPC. That's what it's all about. So the swap deals there's nothing wrong with swap deals. Everyone in the world does swap deals. It's just that we can't afford it because oil is priced in dollars, and anything imported, Nigeria really can't afford it. So unfortunately, that subsidy should have gone a long time ago. A long time ago.
So some people say, the president was wrong to say subsidy is gone. Though he wasn't the one who removed it anyway. You're saying it should have been done a long time ago.
Should have been gone since Goodluck's times.
All right.
Yeah.
So you agree with that policy?
Of course, yeah. The president was right to have removed it. The problem that they did was that they did not do the palliative. I'm talking Tinubu now. He was right to remove it 100%, but he wasted time on the palliatives, and he let the pain come before that policy kicked in. So he should have removed it immediately, and he immediately also passed the palliatives. We're talking about 8,000 naira back then. That was nonsense, But he should have done the buses, the CNG buses immediately, gotten all those stuff in place. So when you remove the subsidy, people see, okay, we had Shaw P back then. They had buses in Abuja and all. Do the exact same thing, but they didn't. The pain came. Now they pulled back on the subsidy. That's what's really happened.